Welcome to your in-depth weekly astrology overview and Zodiac forecast for week beginning the 8th of September. I'm going to share some standout details to look out for to begin with. Then on screen, the event chart right at the start of the week, which provides an important backdrop for the whole 7 days. I'll then go through all the key influences frame by frame to give a clear picture of what we can collectively expect. Please stay with me to the end. I'll then go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces, which you can relate to in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. Thank you for joining me. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please continue to help it to thrive by doing so now. And also check out my new website at patrickarundell.com if you've yet to do so. We're improving it all the time. More and more people are visiting it, so you can enjoy your free daily, weekly, monthly, yearly general love and Vedic horoscopes. Also my free tarot, which is brilliant if I say so myself, and you can download your free natal chart with a wonderful interpretation. That's patrickarundell.com. If you would like to work with me one-to-one, please see the testimonials on screen, but you can check them out in detail underneath this video. As we come into this week, we're surfing the energy of a mighty lunar eclipse. And it's really powerful, this particular event. So I'm going to share about that. We've also just had Uranus, the planet of freedom, innovation, but also higher truths, go into its retrograde, which lasts through to the 4th of February next year. What's the significance of that? Now, Jupiter is going to be right at the heart of the action this week. If you recall last week, he was in an exact square with Mars. Mars can be abrasive, can be assertive, but it's actually in the sign of relating, but the two are broadly still squaring as we come into this week. But Jupiter is linking fabulously to the Sun and also to Mercury. What's the significance of that? I feel there could be some good fortune to come for some people. And also, if you're a maker or a creator, work from home, you have a lively imagination. Venus in the charismatic Leo is continuing to cheer you on, but forging a very subtle but powerful link to the Sun, which helps us to convert that creativity and flair into something more tangible. So I'll share more about that too. So on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. And you can see the two luminaries, the Sun and the Moon, directly opposite. The moon's just moved forward slightly from the exact position of the lunar eclipse, which occurred right at the end of last week. Eclipses have a backdrop energy of 6 months that influences us, but I feel we're going to really be experiencing this very strongly as we come into this new week. It could mean that we're going to feel very sensitive, but I feel the big theme of this particular event is to try to find a balance between the practical, tangible and routine sides of life and our physical well-being, which comes from the Sun and Mercury in Virgo, but also be in touch with the more feeling, spiritual and psychological dimension that comes from the players in Pisces. But Jupiter is like a conduit between the two and is saying to us that if you can take on the challenge to find a better balance in a cheerful and upbeat way, there's a lot to go for. But later on Monday, the moon does move forwards and aligns with the stern energies of Saturn. So from that great sensitivity, we may experience a little bit of overwhelm. And if we do feel that we should be more efficient and productive, that can feel quite challenging, I feel, before the end of Monday. The moon then moves into Aries but aligns with Neptune, the modern ruler of Pisces, ironically, heightening that sense of sensitivity. But just know that Jupiter's got our backs this week. And Jupiter, of course, is exalted in the sign of Cancer. So Jupiter can be about faith, but it can also be about a higher purpose through its rulership of Pisces, which is traditional, but through its rulership of Sagittarius, it's happy-go-lucky. It's about believing that things can get better. It's about having a sense of optimism about what we're doing. So I feel this week, Jupiter, as the week goes on, continues to nudge us. However sluggish we feel at the start of the week, however challenging things feel, however much we're soaking up all that's going on around us in a way which could leave us feeling drained, I sense as the week goes on, if we can just put the focus on concentrating on the practical steps we can do to rebalance our life. So that could be improving what we're eating and drinking, the amount of exercise, rest and sleep we're getting, but also getting in touch with some tender issues that may have been pushed to one side, perhaps to the back of our minds. We all have a shadow side. It's a part of us that we can be reluctant to peer into, but it may be to do with past hurts, disappointments, separations and losses, and it can be to do with things like anxieties and concerns. So what Jupiter's saying, to get a better balance between that more sensory part of our lives, the Pisces energy, and the more practical energy of Virgo, let's get on the front foot and embrace the opportunity. But it is true that Jupiter is in a square with Mars still. It's reached its peak, it's gone beyond that. And if there is someone around us who's not respecting our boundaries, then rightly push back. I feel that that is what Mars can give us, even if it is technically detrimented in Libra. But if you are someone who's a maker, a creator, an artist, with Venus in the charismatic Leo, and you want to showcase your talent, if you can do it in a step-by-step, methodical way, the link between Venus and the Sun gives a great opportunity to do that. Then later this week, as the week goes on, the Sun's sextile to Jupiter, one of astrology's most fortunate influences, is really encouraging us to think on the positive side. And then later in the week we have on Saturday a Mercury GEMINI. This is the fourth of the year. This is when the Sun and Mercury combine, they're in unison. So as we look at it from the Earth, the Sun's resonance and rays are lighting up the brilliance of Mercury, and Mercury's brilliance of Virgo is very much about its ability to help us to grapple with details, be very analytical. But Jupiter's there also saying bring in the emotional dimension as well, because of it being in the water and feeling sign of Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. I'm going to go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces, so please stay with me for that. People sometimes ask, what should I watch? Well, if you know your astrology very well, or you follow whole sign astrology, it's the ascendant all day long. But I think aficionados of astrology will often check out what their sun is doing, even if they do know their ascendant, perhaps the moon too. But the choice is yours. But if your interest in astrology is more developing, you'll never go wrong with the sun, and particularly more where sun energy shows up, where we can compete, where we can be more assertive in our lives, and that's often through our professional interactions. So Aries, your week beginning the 8th of September forecast makes me think about the pop archetype of your sign. Someone who dives into situations with great energy and enthusiasm and then gets bored. I think it's really unfair. What I feel that you do is have a passion for what engages you, and often you listen to your inner voice in order to start the process off. So yes, you can at times perhaps be a little bit too optimistic or not necessarily think things through, but that's where this week can support you, because if you're prepared to grapple with the details, the planetary influences are sure going to help you. But there is a bit of a competition going on, because on one hand, as much as you can work through things systematically, there is another part of the planetary influences which are nudging you to look at what's not so obvious, particularly the things that may not even be in the open, the things that lie deep within you, perhaps deep within your memory. And part of that is to do with Saturn, starting the week full-time in retrograde, but also still aligning with Uranus, also in retrograde. So there could be some conversations this week or over the next few months which could give you an opportunity to circle back and revisit something from your past, that may still be quite active in your subconscious. A separation, a disappointment, a loss, a sense of vulnerability about something that part of you that likes to be proud can be reluctant to grapple with. And with your ruler Mars in that square with Jupiter still, it would be easy to be, to try to be very assertive, perhaps even a touch dominating, to mask in a way the need to look deeper inside of what's going on for you. But later this week, if you are wanting to really grapple with something in a very meticulous way, perhaps it is going to be reordering your domestic space, maybe putting together a new version of your career resume. If you're wanting to move jobs, you can do so with a razor sharpness. But if you are discussing work or doing more on the domestic front, making a greater contribution, I think one of the things to watch out for is not promising more than you'd really like to, because then it can become a little bit of a burden future forwards, and that optimism could become a little bit of over optimism with the Mars Jupiter square. But later in the week, and know that later in the month, as Venus moves forwards, she is going to forge a stunning alliance with Mars, which peaks on the 16th. So if you are wanting to perhaps meet up, see a friend, could be someone you work with, maybe someone you feel comfortable enough to share with, I feel the bubbly influence of Venus, and in its lovely semi-sextile to the Sun, is very encouraging. But if there is someone who's catching your imagination romantically, it could be a hot date that peaks, or you have, around about the 16th of September. So Taurus, your week beginning the 8th of September, sees the continuation of your ruler Venus's beautiful link with the Sun, which goes through the first 3 weeks of September. Now, Venus in Leo for you could see you wanting to use your creative skills to improve your home ambience. That may be through redecoration, it could be through soft furnishings, maybe you're considering moving altogether. But of course, the sign of Virgo is very much about the details. It can be about efficiencies, and if you are wanting to change some things, maybe a reshuffle, moving things around, tidying things up, decluttering could work wonders and give your personal space a real boost. But there's a bigger picture this week, of course, coming from the energy of the eclipse. And for you, I feel that you're going to be very much in demand. But as we all know, we can't keep all of the people happy all of the time. And as you come into this week, I actually feel that one friend could be something of a disappointment. But as this week goes on, the encouragement for you is to focus on what you can do for you that helps you to express your talents. Jupiter in your third house is giving you a boost to have belief and faith in your ideas, but also the confidence to express them to other people with conviction. So Jupiter's linked to the Sun, but also Mercury, and the Mercury cazimi of Saturday could see a really important conversation, connection, even a date as this week draws to a close, but it might not please someone else in your circle. Somebody who perhaps in the past has been quite the ally, may not stop being an ally, but isn't quite understanding that this is a time for you to really express what's important for you. And with Uranus going retrograde in the part of your situation to do with everyday money, coming back into your sign at the end of the first week of November, if there is something that you've started fresh, that you had a lot of faith in, you may need to do some fine tuning, but it doesn't mean to say it can't still make progress. So if you're really feeling inspired by something this week, an interest, hobby, a talent, your social life, a person you're drawn towards, don't let the views of others cloud what you want to do for yourself. Sometimes in life we have to have a single-mindedness to seize the golden prize. So Gemini, your week beginning the 8th of September, suggests some sensitivities around your professional or worldly interactions could come up at the start of this week. If you're not particularly comfortable with the people you work with, that might be part of the equation. And Uranus going retrograde in your sign, particularly if you are born early in the sign of Gemini, may suggest that something that did seem very exciting and intriguing over the last couple of months may need to be reviewed right through to the end of the first week of November. But it doesn't mean to say you can't still make progress with something different. It just needs to feel right. And the fourth house energy that really starts to build up as the week goes on, where we have Mercury, your ruler, can be in a way a little bit detached. Mercury in the fourth house might like to think, but it finds it more difficult to feel, and the fourth house is very much about feeling. I suppose what you can do with Mercury's alliance with the Sun and Jupiter later this week, if you are trying to do anything around property, rentals or purchasing, some good news could come through the end of this week. But it is important to give yourself that permission when it comes to the classic work-life balance of not just thinking in your airy, very detached way. It is important to understand the value of situations from how they feel. But I do also believe that a stroke of good fortune can come for you later this week, and it may be linked to what you do at home, whether that is working from home, whether it's to do with a property valuation, a relative's generosity. It could be that an old family item is more valuable than you realized, or perhaps if you've got a home-based business or you're a hobbyist, you can turn that into something which can bring a new source of income into your situation. So Cancer, your week beginning the 8th of September forecast suggests to me that there's going to be some very important conversations, all the way from your philosophies through to a contract. You may even be discussing some travel plans, higher education. All of it can be very exciting, but whatever the big picture is that you'd like to reach out to, the everyday part of it needs to work for you as well. But Jupiter, the planet which is exalted in your sign, is so influential this week and does give you a lot of support. So if you start this week feeling unsure, maybe a bit stressed, maybe the demands of life or what we're reading and consuming are just feeding into a sense of uncertainty, just know if you keep the faith and you keep investing in what you feel comfortable at and with as an individual, by the end of this week, I feel you're going to start to connect to the people who can provide a lot more clarity out of the lunar eclipse and give you, if you like, a roadmap forwards that does feel comfortable for you, that you do feel connected to. And if you are someone who's got ideas to share, you can provide services, you're skilled with digital technology, you enjoy writing or teaching, your talents can really start to shine by the end of this week. But I think you need to be working in an environment or with people where your values align with the environment that you're in. And if they don't, that's why I feel some kind of big reset can occur as this week goes on. So Leo, your week beginning the 8th of September makes me think about the concept of investment. We're all invested in some kind of way. It can be in our friendships, our interests, it can be our work, our personal relationship if we have one, our children, maybe it's around our investments. And all of this could be something that you're thinking very carefully about from the energy of the lunar eclipse. But Jupiter, the planet of philosophy, in terms of its rulership of Pisces and higher faith, is in your 12th house, which is a kind of Pisces energy, even though the host is the feeling sign of Cancer. And that is clashing with Mars through the first part of this week. It would be easy if you're discussing something about who contributes or gives to what, that you might be a tad defensive or a little bit prickly if you feel that someone's making demands on you. But try to let the conversations go on, because what Jupiter can do is give you some nudges to get in touch with your instincts, which may help you to get beyond a sense of protectiveness, which could be rooted in pride. We all have pride, but with Venus in your sign at the present time, If someone appears to challenge you in some ways, it could feel very personal. We want to be adored when Venus is in our sign, but Venus in Leo has a particular need for that. Now, actually, Venus forges a very constructive link to the Sun, and if you're using your creative talents, that could be a way that you can improve your income by the end of this week. But if there is a situation where you feel you're investing a lot more than the other person, even if you're not expecting a quid pro quo, so everyone has different things that they can contribute, and if you just don't feel that someone is sincere and putting it in as much as you could do, what you can do by the end of this week is take ownership back. Don't be too attached to where you have been invested. Let it go a little bit psychologically and concentrate on what you can do for you that's practical, that gives you a sense of progress, and just see if the energy shifts back towards you in a way that can be helpful. I think it's possible it can be, but clearly if there are some relationships which just aren't working very well, someone doesn't respect your finances, your generosity, your kindness, takes them for granted, this is a time with Saturn in your 8th house to be much firmer about your boundaries. So Virgo, your week beginning the 8th of September forecast has a number of contrasting themes. On one hand, the Sun and your ruler Mercury in your sign are pushing you to focus on your unique talents. And as Mercury and the Sun come together in a conjunction, a cazimi on Saturday, they're cheered on by the buoyant, bubbly and confident energies of Jupiter. If you wanted to start something afresh, this is definitely an opportunity. But the lunar eclipse is reminding you that other people can have a view on your situation or feel they're very supportive to what you want to do. And the trick this week is to stay in touch and have appreciation for that support if it's helping you to really be single-minded, working towards a big goal or ambition. But if you are a Virgo that has had a particular life role or way of being that's been very settled for a long time, I feel that Uranus is retrograde but continuing trine to Pluto suggests that step by step you're being nudged towards contemplating some kind of alteration. It could be to do with your daily routines and habits and the things that give you a sense of comfort that we can all be attached to, but it may be around your work. Uranus is in the most visible part of your chart, which is to do with our connection to the world, and Uranus is about change. And then Pluto's in the part of your situation to do with routines, obligations and responsibilities. But Pluto also can be about change, but it can nudge us in not always an obvious way that we do need to be conscious that something needs to be released in order to bring in something that's fresh and more relevant. So if there is something that you're resisting, a change in your situation, perhaps what this week's lunar eclipse is reminding you of is that there could be other voices that come in. There may be people who see your situation in a different way to you, and if that happens, try not to be resistant or defensive if that's what occurs, particularly with Saturn in your 7th house. Someone could be quite straightforward in challenging what your plan is. But then again, if you are someone who's very creative, very much invested in doing something fresh and new, I feel you can surf these energies really well, but just stay very much aware and appreciative of the support and encouragement that others are giving you. So Libra, your week beginning the 8th of September continues to see Mars in your sign, but squaring off with Jupiter right at the top of your chart. When it comes to your professional situation, particularly if you're pitching for a new role, you work for yourself, there's an influential customer you'd like to snag. I think one of the tricks is this can give you a lot of gusto, drive and confidence, but it is going to be important not to overpromise. And the energy of the lunar eclipse which comes into this week is very much about the details for you and the practical side of things, and yet the host of course is Pisces, because that's your 6th house. So when it comes to obligations and the daily chores, it is important to have a clear idea of what you want to do, because Pisces energy can distort a little bit. Now, of course, you do have Saturn there as well, which brings a cooler, perhaps crisper energy to bear, but the energy on the other side of the heavens, tucked up in your 12th house, also suggests that if you work in a situation where there are politics, you don't necessarily feel completely comfortable with people, I think it is important to consider if there is some research you could do which would give you some insights on what your options could be. Now, your ruler Venus is in a part of your chart very positive for your connections to others, and even some confidential soundings, just getting nuggets of advice from people that you know, whether it's within an existing business or outside of it, can just help you to do some fact gathering. And by the end of this week, as we have the Mercury cazimi, something that may have seemed a little unclear can be clarified, but also with Jupiter's help, you can start to build up your plan of how you'd like to drive things forwards. Now, we're going to see Mercury arrive in your sign on the 18th, and that's going to be a stepping stone to when we have the autumnal equinox, the Sun returns to Libra, and then things will really start to speed up through the last 10 days of this month, with you feeling much more at the heart of things. But this week does have some complexities. It is important to balance your energy, whether it's physical, chores, and also how you feel about things, that Piscean energy. So when it comes to that initial Mars square Jupiter, just bear all of this information in mind. This is a time, I feel, to just prepare yourself, because there's a big launch pad coming for when the Sun arrives into Libra, which can be truly exciting for you. Scorpio, your week beginning the 8th of September suggests that you're thinking very carefully about your long-term direction, but also the players within your world. Your network could go through a degree of change, but it's change that you're likely to be driving. And one of the reasons for that is the lunar eclipse at the end of last week, which provides a backdrop over the next 6 months, and the arrival last week of the mighty Saturn back into the part of your chart, which is to do where you can showcase your individual charisma and personality. They're really pushing you to think carefully about whether you do feel that you're an integral part, because if you feel you're a bit more peripheral or someone that people kind of bring in when it suits them, that's not going to suit you. And I feel by the end of this week, some very exciting new connections can start to build up. Now, Jupiter is squaring off to your traditional ruler Mars at the start of this week, and I feel that could see some home truths being exchanged. Maybe you're going to become much more conscious of who's really for you and who may be not necessarily a fair weather friend, but just a bit lukewarm. You're wanting it to be really passionately meaningful, and quite right too. But that can help you to really cut through and be much more discriminating about who you spend time with, as Mercury and the Sun meet on Saturday in an exact conjunction known as a cazimi. The clarity that you get at the end of this week about what you want to do with your longer term plan and your highest hopes can be phenomenal, but they're also blessed by Jupiter in a very positive way. But it may be that some change is necessary in order for you to really seek a golden opportunity. So sticking with things as they are, maintaining the status quo, may give you a sense of continuity. It may feel a bit more comfortable, but I actually felt that this is a chance for you to really cut through and understand the dynamics at a much deeper level. And one of the things that's going to help you do that is that your ruler Pluto, continuing its retrograde in your sector of everyday emotions, links with Uranus, the planet of innovation and change, but also now retrograde, in such a way that it helps you to really cut through, but also give you the confidence to make some key changes, even if it means stepping away from something that may have served your purpose for a very long time. So if you can really get on the front foot and get truly optimistic, but also take a firm grip on who you share your time with, whether it is around friendships, interests, group involvements, or even romantically, this may be a time when you need to be much more assertive. So Sagittarius, your week beginning the 8th of September, begins with the energy of that lunar eclipse, making itself felt. That's asking you to be conscious of your home, emotional and family situation, just at a time when opportunities to make progress professionally are also very much to the fore. Now, if you're in a job at the moment where it doesn't feel very good, or you work from home, but that makes it difficult to get a separation from your personal life, or perhaps you run your own enterprise from the comfort of your home, you may find yourself needing to juggle that classic work-life scenario. But you know, as this week goes on, Jupiter, your ruler, forges a stunning alliance to both Mercury and the Sun, which peaks on Saturday with the GEMINI, which is when the power and charisma and radiance of the Sun glows up the natural qualities of Mercury. Mercury in Virgo can be about precision, but for you it's the 10th house, so it's your connection to influential people. It's the way you use words and messages and communicate, particularly around your professional hopes. And Jupiter's in the part of your situation to do with long-term money. So there could be a real slice of serendipity, of fortune, as this week draws to a close. But if your situation is not running quite so well, if you feel, for example, that a lot of the domestic load falls on you, as well as having to hold down a full-time job, maybe this week is pushing you to use your natural authority to just let those people around you know it is important for them to pick up some of the slack when it comes to the domestic chores. And that's really important. And if you can get everybody working around the situation in a positive way, that will free you up to concentrate on going for that big chance. And also Uranus now in a retrograde in your 7th house, but still forging a fantastic link to Pluto, the planet of change and evolution, in your 3rd house. Don't be surprised if you still have a conversation despite Uranus's retrograde, which could very surprisingly connect you to a situation which is very exciting. It may be around your love life, it could be professionally, but do keep an open mind. And that's one of the great things about you, Sagittarius. You often do is just finding that juggle, making sure that you're not overwhelmed by work or overwhelmed by home. And if you can just make some adjustments, Jupiter's there along with the Mercury GEMINI at the end of the week to really push you forwards in a very, very powerful way. So Capricorn, your week beginning the 8th of September suggests there's going to be some lively conversations this week, and you could be thinking and talking about things like higher education, long distance travel, holiday or vacational destinations, or perhaps a new mode of transport or some upgraded tech. But the overwhelming theme is that the direction of travel over the next 6 months calls out to a part of you that perhaps does yearn for a little bit of a change. And you know the old saying, a change is as good as a rest. And if that need for variety and spontaneity is challenged too much by the demands of your everyday situation, whether it is the kids, the domestic chores, whether it is family demands and so forth, that could create a little bit of frustration and also resentment unless you can get on the front foot. But what's going to help you this week is that Mars, the planet of passion but also of assertion, is in a very dominant part of your scope. So if you need to show a lead on something, and remember you are a cardinal sign, so you're one of the 4 leaders of the Zodiac, So if you need to find your voice and tell people how you feel and signpost the way forwards, even if at first they may be a little bit reluctant to hear your message, keep going, because later this week, as the glorious Jupiter, the planet of fortune, links magnificently with the Sun and Mercury on Saturday within the Mercury cosmi, which itself can provide great clarity and vision, there may be a conversation that you're going to have where you can align with someone who really gets what you want to do. It could be a friend who's excited about the idea of travelling, or perhaps going to night classes, or perhaps pushing out of your home environment and going off to an institution of higher education. And that encouragement and support, or desire to work with you on it, can really be very motivating for you. So Aquarius, your week beginning the 8th of September, comes hot on the tails at the potency of the lunar eclipse in the water sign of Pisces, which brought the celestial curtain down on last week. But eclipses provide a backdrop energy for the following 6 months. And if you recall, Saturn, your traditional ruler, also inverted back into Pisces on the first day of September. I feel, therefore, one of the things you will need to grapple with as you come into this new week is anything to do with your life foundations, your sense of personal self-worth and value, but also your approach to everyday resources. Now, because Saturn was in this part of your chart for 2.25 years through to the 3rd week of May this year, you have had a chance to work on this before. But it is possible that there has been something that shifted. I hope you are developing a much firmer sense of your personal value, because if you do, that will attract better things in your direction. But realistically, particularly as the world is changing at quite a pace, there may be some juggling to be done in terms of everyday costs, where you can make economies, where you can be a bit cannier, and that can feed into how you can protect your longer term future, which comes from the energy of the sign of Virgo, where the Sun, but also the quick-witted Mercury are. Now, they're going to be meeting in a beautiful alliance on Saturday, but are going to be supported by the expansive and potentially very fortunate energies of Jupiter. So if you are discussing something to do with perhaps getting a loan, or funding a business idea, or remortgaging a property, or you're talking about a contractual matter, as long as you keep it real and learn from Saturn's lessons in the last couple of years to be very circumspect and think about how things might be if your circumstances change, so you're very realistic, there is a window of opportunity this week. Further, Uranus, your modern ruler, of course went into that retrograde for 5 months at the end of last week. But through to the end of the first week of November, he's going to continue to support you in a fabulous link to Pluto in your sign, pushing you to redefine your individuality, but also is still in touch with your traditional ruler Saturn. So don't underestimate how your vision, your innovation, and also your ability to spot trends, together with being very hardworking, keeping it real, valuing the more traditional sides of life, together with those more progressive energies of yours, could see you by the end of this week actually turn something round that you may have felt was a little bit daunting, not just quite recently, but perhaps over the last couple of years. So Pisces, your week beginning the 8th of September, could begin with a sense of inner conflict. There's a part of many Pisces people which can be very availing to the needs of others, and that sacrificing part of your personality is something that others need to treat with respect, but you need to marshal it with care too. If someone's been making a lot of demands upon you, but not really recognizing your needs, your own individual approach, that could be something that puts you into a degree of tension with them. But this week is also a chance for you to assert your boundaries and seize your power in a much firmer way. The big picture, Pisces, is that once every 18.7 years, what's known as the nodal axis, the North Node, returns to our sign. Now, it's very much to do with fate, but I feel in your case, because it aligned with that lunar eclipse, it's pushing you to be much braver about going for what works for you, even if you feel you might, at some level, be letting someone else down. Because if you do, what it can help you to dispel is any resentment that's been building up, that you give more than you get. And it can be very liberating, actually, to just say to other people, look, I have this particular interest, or I don't want to cover your shift, or I need to do this for myself. In other words, have the confidence to say no. And ironically, once you do, there could be a terrific connection with someone later this week. It may be through business, it could be friendship-wise or socially, maybe even romantically. But it is very important to understand your need to reinforce your individual persona, and also you have the right to do that and not to feel guilty telling people what you want, but also telling people what you won't do. The respect it will generate will be very, very helpful to you indeed. Now, Jupiter, your traditional ruler, is providing a touch of celestial magic throughout this week. It is in a bit of a dust-up with Mars over the first few days, but that peaked last week. But by the end of this week, Jupiter forges such a fantastic alliance with the Sun and Mercury as they meet in an exact conjunction, the cazimi on Saturday. Even if you are just clarifying your boundaries, letting people know what you will or won't do, or you do have a lovely connection, or you break away from a relationship that's not working for you anymore, what you're really doing is honouring the power of the moon, which is your right to your individual emotions, which are very authentic to your needs as a person. So it's all about what they call these days your agency. So have the confidence to say no, set your boundaries, and you're going to find your relationships with others can be transformed, not just this week, but over the next 6 months too. If you would like to work with me one-to-one, please see the testimonials on screen, but you can check them out in detail underneath this video.